Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with a brand new episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon, the show I do to celebrate the fact that tabletop role playing game and the broader gaming hobby, I keep saying that, tabletop role playing game at least, is 50 years old and then some. Tabletop hobbying is certainly older than that. But this whole kind of what we call the modern gaming culture kind of leads back to 50 plus years ago when D&D first started. That's, of course, was the first year of this show. Since we wrapped that up and moved on to season 2, I've been broadening the range of what I talk about to bring in people who have worked on not just role-playing games, but other places within the industry. And today I've got a very fascinating guest that someone I've met a few times, but don't really know that well. So I'm planning to learn a lot along with everyone else. He is a man behind Gamehole Con, one of the people behind the True Dungeon. Uh, well, you know what? I would start talking about this and I'll get things wrong, so why don't I just let him come on and tell you things right? It is Alex Kammer. And if I hit the button here, Alex will join me. Alex, thank you very much for being here.
Oh, Stan, I'm delighted to be here. Coming to you live from the Gamehole.
That certainly is something that I wanted to talk about. Like having been to the show, and I before I went to Gamehole Con, certainly one of my questions was, why in the world would they name it Gamehole Con? It's such a weird name. And then having gotten to see the Gamehole, I know why that's something to celebrate.
I appreciate that. The number of times I've had to answer the question, why does your show have such an odd name? It's if the old saw if I had a nickel kind of thing. But and the reason simply is that the Gamehole is a place. It's used to be in my basement. And that's where I gathered with my friends who now run Gamehole Con. And so we are the Gamehole. And if we're going to put on a show, it's got to be Gamehole Con. And that was the only option.
Right.
So that's how that all worked out. It wasn't some clever marketing ploy. It wasn't something that was workshopped in some ad agency. It wasn't something that was supposed to strike people as weird. It just is. So
right.
That's how it came to be.
But that's the best kind of weird, the kind that comes naturally. Think of all the other cons out there that you try and remember. What was the name of this one? What was the name of that one? People remember Gamehole Con.
I suppose that it is an unintended consequence, but it's a cool one. And I think it does. Before we launched, I spent some time thinking about it. I would like to think of myself as a fairly contemplative person, and what I thought, of course, there'll be certain people that react, that's kind of a weird name. Well, I thought it would be self-selecting then, that folks who, didn't have any sense of humor and thought it was weird and I don't want to go there, that's cool. This maybe not the show for you anyway.
Right.
So what it has, I think it's helped us generate the real cool vibe that we have, which is joy, celebration, fun, jocularity, having fun with your friends, getting together with friends, and celebrating this wonderful hobby. And so that sort of launched into, it's a very clear signal that we're not corporate, and we're not. We're so not. I think that's again somewhat unintended, but also it was not completely unintended either. Like we wanted to communicate who it was that we were.
Well, you know what? A job well done. So folks in chat are saying that there is some twitchiness. It certainly is something going on my end, if it is. So let me just say that if it clears up, that's great. If it somehow boots us out, I'll reboot the computer and we'll come back again. Usually it irons itself out. But just today I was over at my ISP changing plans so I could get a little more, a little bigger pipe coming in and out. So that should have actually. I'm more worried that that's happening now because they said it should take care of itself. But knock on wood, we'll be fine. So Alex, for people who don't know, who is Alex Kammer besides Gamehole Con? But What you got? What's your bio?
Sure. Yeah, boy. I am by profession. I'll answer that first, I guess. I'm a personal injury lawyer. I'm a trial lawyer. And so, people who may not know immediately what that means, it means that I am the kind of person who represents injured people suing insurance companies. That's what I do professionally for a living. So there's that. I am sitting in the Gamehole. This is a restaurant that I'm a part owner of. So I am also a business owner and on several different fronts, involved in a variety of different businesses, which I won't bore you with. But this one, where the Free House Pub is just down the street from where I live. I live in Middleton, Wisconsin, with my lovely wife and two children. My big girl is about to turn 18. My little guy is about to be a freshman in high school. So we're busy as hell.
Yeah.
And other than that, I'm busy with the wonderful world of gaming. I have, come into the hobby. I've been in the hobby forever, and we can talk about the roots and, since the early 80s. But the last 15 years have been really magical. Now I own a publishing company. I've authored and designed adventures for virtually every major RPG company out there. I've done some work for Wizards. It's been really cool. And so with Gamehole Con, I'm also a part owner of True Dungeon, this immersive, tremendous experience that you may have experienced at Gen Con or Gamehole Con or a few other shows. So it's a lot, man. I guess I got a lot of balls in the air,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Um, so, as I was saying to you before we started, I think of someone who's in the age range that you and I are in. Like when we got into gaming, it was a little side category. That wasn't the way it is today. It's assumed that gaming is kind of in front of everyone. So, how did gaming come into young Alex's life?
Yeah, first of all, you're absolutely right. The world has changed. The world has changed for the better in that respect. My uh, uh, people that are my kids' age, there's nothing weird about magic
Right?
or elves or anything. This is a world that grew up with Harry Potter and so on. So I mean, this is all mainstream stuff now. But you're absolutely right, my man. That is not the way it was when we were kids. I am sitting here in Middleton, Wisconsin, so very close to Ground Zero where D&D was born.
Mm.
I grew up about an hour north of here, and as a result, I think we got D&D a lot earlier than most people because we were literally, where I lived, where I grew up, is about 2 hours away from Lake Geneva.
Right.
So there was a display of Dungeons and Dragons in a small town department store. It wasn't there was no hobby
Right.
store. I was in a small town. There was no hobby store. So the fact that I could buy Dungeons and Dragons in a department store, the same place you'd buy all the other things in the department store, was pretty weird. And I saw the cover art of the four AD&D handbooks, and I thought, oh my God, what is that? I need that in my life. And I had been introduced to it a couple of years earlier. I had an older neighbor who had bought the what I now know to be the home set.
Right.
But back then, it just was another board game. And he said, I don't know, it's a little weird. I don't really get it. Do you want it? And I looked at it, and I was pretty young. I was 10 at the time. And I looked at it and I said, it looks really cool, but I don't really get it either. And so it wasn't until I turned to the ripe age of 12 till D&D really started to make sense for me. But yeah, that's how it was. I just happened to be near Ground Zero, and it was around me.
I know a few people. I mean, even it didn't strike me until you said it. Like, of course, Lake Geneva being where it is, like that it would be the local company. It would be better represented in more mainstream places there. But beyond that, I know people who said that they found D&D at Sears. So I mean, that used to
Mm,
happen sometimes. That you just kind of walk into it in an unexpected place like that. Um, so what?
yeah.
Before you got into so if it was right for you, what were you reading or doing beforehand that kind of set the stage for D&D in your life?
That's a great question, Preeti. You're right on, man. That's science fiction and fantasy literature was. I'm not sure. It's a sort of a chicken and egg thing when it comes to D&D for me in my life.
Right.
I had a friend who introduced me to, gosh, I think it was my first Edgar Rice Burroughs novel, I don't even remember what year it was. I was young, and I started just consuming that sort of thing. So we're talking like what's now considered pretty vintage sci-fi,
Yeah.
and then early days fantasy. And that it's again the world has changed so unbelievably for the better that way. You go to a bookstore now and you just the choices. My God, you can't even possibly. And as voracious of a reader as I am, you could never read it all. Back then, you could read it all. Those
Yeah.
sections weren't very big. And so that's where it started. So I was really into the science fiction fantasy novels of all the usual, like everything, all the usuals, right? I won't list them all. And I think it was probably the bright covers of those, especially the pulps,
Right.
that when I saw the D&D books, I thought, aha, this is like that. I mean, that was a clear signal to me that these things were in the same world. And they were, for me at least. And so that's
Yeah.
that's how the transition was made for me, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, similar for me. I remember going into particularly used bookstores and just seeing there were, as you say, in the main bookstores, there weren't a lot of fantasy or science fiction. It was a relatively small section. But in the used bookstores, at least by me, there were just rows and rows, particularly of the men's adventure style. A bunch of Conan books with Frazetta paintings on the covers, and and some of the other classic pulp stuff like that. And yeah, I similar to
Yeah.
you. That's part of what whetted my appetite for this kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think our experience is extremely common. I mean, I think the art of D&D, which is rightly gets as much attention as it does,
hmm.
is massive in the growth and proliferation of the hobby, no doubt.
Ed Stark asked, based on the fact that you're in the area, I'm sure. How early was it that you first got to a Gen Con?
Yeah, not as early as I would have liked. My first one was when I was 18. So this was Gen Con 1989. And it's somewhat topical because the art you're going to draw is a print that I bought at that
Huh.
Gen Con in 1989 with a few bucks in my pocket, and Keith Parkinson was standing there. And I looked at the Northwatch print and I couldn't believe it. And there was lots of other good stuff that had been released that year, and I had very limited funds. And I walked the vendor hall, and it wasn't. I mean, it's tiny little vendor hall in retrospect, but it seemed huge to me now. Back
Yeah.
then, I mean, but but it was, it was pretty small. And I walked it 3 or 4 times, and Keith kept watching me lap, lap, lap. And I finally broke down. I said, this is all I have. So I have it's hung up in the back room here, and in the game hole, signed and numbered one of those 1,000 reproductions that he did
Wow.
of North Watch. And that means a tremendous amount to me. It's by far my favorite piece of art, fantasy art, and it's also just was a big deal for me because I made the right decision. I made the right decision that day. I got a chance to talk to Keith Parkinson. I got a chance to get this awesome piece of art. I got a signed and numbered print that is very rare now. And the stuff that was available, the new releases are, that's okay. As I've acquired them anyway.
Yeah.
So here we
All right, so that's as good a segue as any to get me over here. This is the piece you're talking about, Northwatch, which was a cover of Dragon 137, among other things. Had you seen that issue of Dragon, or was the image new to you when you were at the Gen Con?
It was new to me. It was new to me, and so when I saw it, I couldn't believe the how stark it was and how lonely it was and how evocative it was.
Yeah.
It was different. So much fantasy art is really busy, and I loved how simple in some ways, rich details, but I love just the starkness of it. So no, I hadn't seen it, and it's funny because I've had that same Dragon magazine gifted to me by a handful of other friends saying, "Hey, I know you like this," and so I have like four
Yeah.
copies of that same issue of Dragon. But yeah, that's I'd never seen it before. Seen it that day, back in Gen Con '89.
Um, all right. So when after you discovered it, who was the group that you started playing with? Did you have a group of friends that were also likewise primed, or did you have to bring them into the the cult, as it were. Oops. We seem to have lost Alex. He'll be back. I hope. I can keep drawing while he does it. Here we go. Hey. I
Mac, I got kicked out.
don't.
Apparently didn't like my answer.
I did. I liked your answer very much. um, yeah. Again, knock on wood. Hopefully, that's the only time that happens. But I was asking when you did get it, did you have a group of friends who were likewise primed for that, or did you have to talk people into trying this strange new game?
Yeah, yeah. No, I've been in now given how I'm so in the hobby and I go to, a dozen shows a year and I've met literally thousands of gamers and it's interesting hearing that the same sort of similar story about entrance into the hobby. Mine was, back in the day, I played one-on-one D&D with my friend Trevor in the lunchroom at party. Played it some, and then it wasn't until my freshman year of college at UW-Madison when I had a real
Hmm.
first true gaming group, and we played real campaigns, and we really, that was the beginning truly of playing D&D. Like I really tried to play AD&D as written as well as we could, and we did. It was great. And then that was my first real major game group. Um, and then I've been fortunate enough to gather now with the guys in the game hole once or twice a week, 5 years.
That's a
But
while.
yeah, and it's been great. So I'm and also all the convention running I do. But yes, but it was back then. It was started off with my buddy, just two of us. He was the DM, and I crawled around the caves of chaos for a while, and all that kind of stuff. And but then in my freshman year,
Oh dear. I'll keep plugging you in as long as you keep calling back.
yeah, I'm not. I hope it's not on my end. I mean, I'm showing really good band strength here, so I don't know what's going on. I apologize if something
I
I'm doing, but
well
I don't think
yeah,
so.
like I say, I hope it's not my end too, but I I don't. If I suppose if Ed Stark says I offended you, you offended him. But we'll see. One of the things for me about doing this show is I've pushed beyond the level of I know I really understand what's going on. I just know what buttons to push. So
I got
occasionally,
you.
when problems like this crop up, I'm like, all right, I have a vague idea what the problem might be, but if there's any real troubleshooting, I'm guessing. Uh,
Sure,
so
sure.
we'll keep our fingers crossed again. And as I think I was telling you beforehand, I just try to eliminate some of this by upgrading my plan with my service provider today. But maybe making a change today was not the best plan. Now, as I'm thinking about it, It's-
Well,
oh
we'll
well.
see. Yeah.
Um, so when you were playing one on one, you say your friend was doing the DMing for you. Did you ever switch off?
I didn't at that point. I didn't at that point. It wasn't until I was at an undergrad at the UW Madison that I took my first spin behind the screen.
Uh, so let's start with. I mean, what kind of character did you have? One character you played through most of the high school stuff, or did you run through a bunch of them?
I don't really remember. I think I had just one. I had a thief, assassin thief that I played because that was about the best thing I could do is for to have one character.
Hmm.
Instead of trying to do some gestalt stuff or whatever, that seemed to work pretty well. So that's what I played mostly those middle school years.
And then when you got to to UW, what what were you playing? What did your start off group?
Yeah, I mean, we played AD&D. I played a ranger for a long time, and we played a lot of homebrew stuff that we sort of rotated DMs. This is where the idea of rotating DMs
Mm-hmm.
and um, came from, which is something we do to the current day in the game hall. We don't have a permanent DM. We the chair rotates, and that's been really great. So we have people, roll in with games, and we have a campaign, and then someone else takes the next one. And so that's what we did. So I started that when I was a kid at Madison, and I've been doing that ever since. It's a lot of work to be. I'm impressed by people who identify as forever DMs.
Right.
That's a big job, and I always like to. I love doing it, and I love rotating out, and then I love rotating back in because it re-energizes me, and I'm ready to go.
About how long do you go between taking turns in the seat these days?
It really depends on how long the game goes. I'm running right now, for example, the Dungeons of Drakkenheim, and that is a lengthy game. That's a big bite. That's a big campaign book by Ghostfire Gaming and the Dungeon Dudes. It's really great, and we're probably around session 30 or so in that game. So we've been playing for a while now, probably 6 months or so. I think we'll probably wrap up here in April, I would guess, if I had to guess. So that's a long stint. Usually, someone runs a game for a month or two, and then it rotates out.
I know in our I'm playing with a group. One of Steve Winter is in the chat room. He's in my the group I play with on both Saturdays and Monday nights, and we we also take turns, but there are people who tend to come up more frequently. Like on our Saturday night group, Jeff Grubb runs about every other, or certainly every third thing that we do. And on our Monday nights, Steve has been taking long turns as DM with about a 6 month break, and then he's back in the chair. And I don't know
Sure.
how much of that is their will and how much we're pushing them, but it's worked out. It's worked out so far for them.
No, that's amazing. Steve, both are great guys and great DMs. So that's
Yeah,
wonderful. I've
yeah.
played a fair amount with Steve over the years, so that's very cool. We have the same dynamic in our group too. I mean, there are a couple of us that do most of it. Quite frankly, there are some people who have not run a game in many years, and there are two or three of us that do most of it, and I'm one of those.
And, as long as everyone's happy, that works out.
Yes, exactly. And I'm also I run a second group with a couple of the same guys, but a couple of different people. We get together, and in that I'm now running Alien. I'm kind of become known on the con circuit as the guy who runs a lot of Alien,
Yeah.
and because it's such a great con game. So I get asked now. I quite frankly, can't get away from it. I'm asked to run Alien at every show I go to, which is fine, which is great. But anyway, I have a new campaign I'm launching on Monday. It's the Rapture Protocol from the new Alien Evolved rule set. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm by far and away not. Uh, it's not only D&D that we play.
Right. I actually that leads up to my next question was uh, uh, when did you start experimenting with other games? And it certainly sounds like
Yeah,
that's you run into people who play D&D and that's all they play, and you run into people who tried everything, and most of the game designers I know fall into that second category, but um, a lot of people who have long time in the hobby don't. So when did you start branching out?
oh boy, I think it was early days of um, Pathfinder, quite frankly, which is D&D, just in a different label.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I guess, gave us the permission, kind of odd way to think of it, but I've really not really thought about it. That's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that, about the experimenting with other systems and other rule sets. And once we played Pathfinder for a while and said, well, that's fine. It's just another flavor of D&D. Why not? And then went down the road, down the line then. So we play a ton of Call of Cthulhu. We play a lot of Savage Worlds. We play a lot of the Free League games, which I'm partial to, and those are ones that I tend to run. And then still a lot of D&D, obviously. So the last decade, I think it probably mirrors really the explosion of the RPGs as a hobby, really, and we live now in this golden age of
Mm.
RPGs, in my opinion, where there's really something for everyone, and the new ones are coming, seem like every day,
Yeah.
and they're good, and they're fun, and so yeah, this is a great time to dip your toes in other waters, because man, there are a lot of options out there.
That's interesting to me. So that means that though you were playing through it in the '90s when we had World of Darkness and
Yep.
Shadowrun and Warhammer role playing and all the other things that came in, you those weren't at that time. You weren't experimenting much. You were, or that's
True. I
sounds
wasn't
like you're
playing.
saying.
I wasn't really gaming. There's a period of time there when I was in law school, and there was a good almost decade break where I didn't really play any games, and so that was about then. So it was not until the late '90s when I got back into gaming. So yeah.
Yeah, you know what? That you struck there. I usually ask that question because so many people do. Although it's funny because it's usually college, but I mean, going on to law school, that's a whole other level of depth that you've got to focus on your studies. So I understand how that
Yeah.
would be. Um,
Yeah, and I was out of town, in a different university. I just was a whole new scene for me, and I guess I could have, but yes, absolutely, I was I was busy trying to work a part time job, put myself through school, all that business.
um, you know what I had? It just struck me the rules, game rules from the early days, the '80s and the going into the early '90s. Very often, people will compare it to programming or legal language in the way that the more complex games were broken down. Does as a lawyer did did looking at rules and looking at legal writings, how do you feel that comparison goes?
It is it can, yeah, it's an apt, I think an apt analogy, in some respects. Keep that, just like all game systems are not the same, and have different levels, different fields of law. So
Right.
if you are more inclined to be, if you're doing UCC filings every day, or you're a federal income tax lawyer, or you're in admiralty court or whatever, some very code heavy kind of law practice, that's probably turns you on to really dig into the minutia of systems. I'm actually kind of, I would, in my own mind, famously not into game. I'm not into systems. I'm not. I'm into these. I love settings. I'm a settings guy. I
Right.
love the narrative side of gaming. I like rules that are intuitive and that get out of the way. And I don't like the systems that are super heavy, but I'm willing to play them as long as someone else runs them.
Right.
Um, that's just for me. So I'm definitely, I like the trend of where we are with RPGs now, of going, like really looking at a rule and say, do we need this? Does this make any sense? And what is it? How does it add to the game? Doesn't add anything? Let's remove it. I'm fully in favor of that type of mentality.
All right. You're getting a little. Oh, there we go. I was about to say you're getting choppy, but you're getting disappeared. I was just about
Back
to say,
again.
you're getting a little choppy, but then you were gone.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Steve Winter says the proliferation of small press games now reminds me of the situation in the '70s. The biggest difference is that the quality of the small press stuff now is much much higher, and I think
Yeah.
he's 100% right on that. Um,
Yeah.
did you in the '80s or and going into the '90s did you play any of the other um, champions or uh, um, Traveler or any of the other games of that era?
See, that's the only one was Traveler. In fact, I actually played Traveler and had Traveler before Dungeons and Dragons. That was my buddy Trevor, same guy, had the little black box, and we busted that out. And I have proudly told Mark Miller several times that I played Traveler before D&D, and I loved it. It was somewhat inscrutable for us, the two seventh grade boys looking at it, but boy, we built some really cool ships, and had a lot of fun with Traveler. I played a lot of Traveler since the different editions, um, but I've caught up that way. But yeah, Traveler was it. But no, I didn't. Again, I didn't have a hobby store. I didn't have a game store.
Right.
So that kind of thing I wouldn't have seen that. I would have to order it or go to the big city to do that, and that was hard for me to do until I could drive. So because I was about an hour away, so it wasn't until I could drive and I could come down to Madison to Pegasus Games, which is on State Street here in Madison, and
Mm.
could go and look at all the awesome stuff that they had in the store. I couldn't believe it. So that limited some of the games I was exposed to up to that point.
Um, yeah. All right. So I could, you know what? I've always found when I have this part of the conversation, I could stay in it longer and do a whole hour just talking about this stuff. But let's kind of move on. So you went to law school. You came back. How was it that you started gaming again? Was it immediately after getting back and setting up a shop?
So it was like I think probably a lot of people have similar experience. I was at this is a social gathering. I was at uh, it was a law school graduation party for some friends who were a year behind me in law school, and I was standing there talking to another guy um, from the same town, and we were just talking about it. He's from La Crosse, whatever, another
Mm.
town in Wisconsin. We're just talking about stuff, and I have no idea how this came up. Maybe someone made a slightly nerdy reference or something, and it was basically we had the you played D&D moment, you played D&D 2 moment,
Mm.
um, and then we're talking about, God, wouldn't it be fun now that we're kind of, this is at the, the hoary age of, 28 or whatever, of wouldn't it be fun to play D&D now that we're these grown-ups, and that we're adults. And so that's how it started, and I had another young lawyer who was in my firm. Turned out he had my little brother, and that that's how the first iteration of the game hole became, in about 1998, 1999.
Um, sorry, I'm sitting here
Right.
trying to figure out how these scales work.
You're trying to walk and chew gum. I can monologue if you like, but I don't want to do
No,
that to your
no,
show.
no. I, what really is that you have such a. I mean, this is such like two steps off the path from what I usually talk about. And I'm like, oh, this is cool, and I need to think about it, or I hadn't thought about these questions. Oh, come up with a new one right now off the top of your head. Do it, Stan. Um, so I'm this is what happens. Even if I'm not drawing, I'm going down two question paths simultaneously in my brain.
Yeah.
um,
Good.
tell me a little bit about being a lawyer, just and how that kind of does that. We talked about how the writing might factor in, but that it strikes me as a profession that leads to thinking in a way that is applicable to what some people do at the gaming table. Does that strike you at all as
Sure.
a
Absolutely. It, it does. And let me put it this way. Gaming, and especially the way it added rocket fuel to my love of fantasy literature,
mhm,
to science fiction, then reading more broadly, to dive, as a young person, reading Tolkien and all kinds of stuff I never probably would have, um, made me a very good reader, and a much better writer. And that then lends itself to academia. It made me a much better student.
mhm,
I was school became much easier for me. Um, Law school then sort of became very natural, for me when I went. I was a good law student, and I linked directly to my background of gaming that gave me a greater skill set, and improved my academic potential. There's just no question. I would not be the successful attorney I am today, quite frankly, without role playing games and without fantasy literature. Absolutely not. So, and I think that's not uncommon. If you look, I mean, I know tons of lawyers who are gamers. I see a lot of lawyers at conventions. I see a lot of lawyers at Gamehole Con. We all kind
mhm.
of find each other, and it's the ability to comprehend what you're reading, to think, strategically, to break down larger problems into smaller ones. That's all that's like core legal skill set stuff. Um, and gaming definitely put me on the right path that way, which is such a funny thing. It sounds like a PSA, but uh, it's true. I mean, in my case, it's true. I guess I can't speak for everyone, but it is for me.
No, I
That
certainly,
that
for years, as a someone who's been in education previously, I certainly have long pushed similar thoughts of being focused in this kind of thing, having that interest and feeding it pays off dividends in all other kinds of reading or research or expressing yourself either verbally or in written form, um, and that there's a lot that gaming preps you for or teaches you in a fun way that have real world applications.
Sure. And then the sort of the flip side of it, sort of more of what directly you asked me to, and I'll try to be responsive to that, is I'm a trial lawyer. So that means I'm one of those lawyers that goes to court, and
Mm,
I stand in front of a jury, and I try to sell intangibles to people of average ignorance. Right? I'm trying to convince them that they should side with me and my client for, hopefully very thoughtful reasons. And that experience of, first of all, preparing a case for trial and then trying it,
mm,
which is not unlike a performance. So the measure of a good performance, quite frankly, is the preparation you put into it,
mm,
and then being able to execute it. It's like running a good game. It's the same skill set. So when I'm at cons and people, I run a game and people say, "Man, you are a really good DM. How'd you, it's from being a trial lawyer. It's just, I'm not, it makes me a more natural public speaker. It makes me confident in my delivery. And I also then have a process of preparing my games. So I know that I'm thinking ahead and anticipating, what could happen, and I'm ready for it. And so, just like any endeavor, the better prepared you are to do it, the better it'll go. And
right.
so, and I hope that same discipline carries over to Gamehole Con, and that people, appreciate the work that we all put in the off season to make it run smoothly when people are there. It's the same thing. It's just that we want to make sure it's prepared properly, and that we think our way through all the possible contingencies so we're ready to roll. That's all from my background of being a trial lawyer. It's just the preparation and making sure that because you can't anticipate when things go wrong. You can't anticipate when the sand will shift under your feet.
Right.
All you can do is have things in place to help you when that happens. And so that's just kind of the way I'm wired now, as a result of being a trial lawyer now for 30 years.
All right. Before I ask you next question in our conversation, I'm going to ask you a question about the drawing.
Yeah.
Because my recollection of encountering this as a Dragon magazine cover was a much zoomed in on the figure version. But when you
Yeah.
talk about it, when I look at the full piece, as you say, is much lonelier. It's the dragon, the rider is a smaller part of it. So, do you have a preference? I chose to do this because you said how much it meant to you, and I love this piece too. So it's always there are a bunch of drawings I'm waiting to do. So, uh, do you what do you think? Would you rather see this finished kind of at this scale that it's on, or where the we get a little closer to the characters and we can maybe get a little more detail in them?
Yeah, no, I like that perspective, Stan, because that's what it was. How it was cropped for the Dragon magazine cover.
Right.
The full frame is more of an almost an Ansel Adams kind of. He's really following the rule of thirds as you compose that. But I think I'd love to see what you do with the smaller
Yeah.
and the more focused image. I think that's cool. Yeah, go for it, man.
All right. All right. So you on top of all the other things we talked about, one of the things that you people you there's no reason for you to be well known as this, but among in the industry, you're well known as a collector of
Hmm.
memorabilia and historical artifacts from the gaming world. How did you start doing that? And I'm assuming you did that before Gamehole Con.
Yes, yes, I was. Um, I guess it starts because I was always one of those kids that took care of their things. So my original player's handbook is still in pretty good.
Oh no, it's a good sentence. It's a that's a interesting frame to freeze on. Don't you hate when this happens? Again, I'm hoping that that's more on Alex's end and not my end forcing this problem. Hmm. Now I'm trying to decide what, because I'm noticing some lag on my side too. Do I have everything else on my laptop shut down? I do. It's not a laptop. It's my desktop. But thank you for the reminder. Oh, there we go. The fact that it didn't just kick him, and the fact that you're still here and it didn't just kick him out tells me again probably was his end. So hard to tell. Oh, these gremlins! They're gonna get you. They're gonna get me. All right, I'm gonna drop the opacity on this now, and then draw another version of the pencils on top of it. Oh, here we go. Hi. Let's say the problem is on my end and continue.
Okay, I don't know. Yeah, because I'm just looking at my phone and I'm getting full Wi-Fi here. I don't know what if there's
I
something
don't.
certain.
Yeah, this is not. But again, this on the in the category of problems that have not happened before. Of of if it is, and I'm more than willing to presume that it is, that my end for some reason is kicking you out repeatedly. I don't know why, and I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, no, and if it's and same apology if it's on my end if I'm having surging internet here and it looks solid and then it drops. I
Yeah.
don't know why that'd be, and I have no explanation.
All right. So the last thing you were saying was that your player's handbook looked really good.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. So I just kept it, and so I kept my stuff, and I dragged it around with me through my various travels, through schools, and so on. And then when I started playing again in the late '90s, I started acquiring stuff, catching up and getting all the, I remember being I was a sophomore in college when the second edition rule set came out, and I was super pissed. I'm like, damn it, I got to buy new rules, I got to buy
Yeah.
new books. I don't have any money. And so I never really bought any of the 2E stuff at that, when it first came out. So I went back, and then now I'm a, just very new lawyer, but I got a regular paycheck, and got friends to play with. I went and started acquiring all the stuff that I wanted that I could never buy before. And as I was doing so, I just started, I'm a classic completionist nerd, right?
Mm.
And when I found that there was something else I didn't have, I really wanted to get it, and so that's where it really started. And in the early late '90s and early 2000s, the market hadn't gone crazy like it is now. It's the value of the stuff is wild. So I had done, most of my collecting was in, probably between 2000 and 2010, a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
And I've acquired stuff that since then, and but that's how. And so and then once I start to realize, man, I have a lot of this stuff and it's important. That it means a lot to me and it means a lot to the hobby, and apparently there are not a lot of people out there like me that have all this stuff.
Hmm.
So that's how it kind of snowballed, and I have now, I'm now known as one of those guys. I'm one of the whatever. I don't know what the, so I have a lot of cool old stuff. I'm very proud of it. I take it seriously. By my role of being an archivist, a preservationist, taking care of the stuff properly and make sure it's stored properly. Um, I have several things that really should be and hopefully will be in a museum someday.
All right. So for those who don't know, what are some of those things?
Well, off just looking up here, I see the original Forgotten Realms maps that our friend Ed Greenwood
Mm.
sent to your friend Jeff Grubb, who received them at TSR and dutifully taped them all together following Ed's instructions. And then Jeff took a blue highlighter and outlined the coast, and hung it in his cubicle and made some other notes on it. And that was the Forgotten Realms, and that was the from that map all the awesome stuff that the TSR produced for those many years came. Um, so when so that came into my collection about, I don't know, 8-10 years ago. So I had it first of all restored and then vacuum sealed in a basically think of a like a comic book bag, like a Mylar
Yeah.
bag, but more than that, and vacuum sealed, and now it's behind 3/8 inch UV blocking plexiglass
Huh.
to keep it safe and also to display it. Um, so yeah, that's one of the relics. I have another. I have the known world maps that Lawrence Schick and Tom Moldvay played with in college,
Yeah.
and that became the Gazetteers, and that was it was called the known world, and that became the Gazetteers in the Mystara setting. So that's another one of the original pieces of cartography I have. Um, let's see. I have Dave Sutherland's EPT maps, which became Undermountain.
Right. E-
Those kicking around in here.
For those who don't know, EPT is Empire of the Petal Throne.
Yep, yep. Sorry, yep. I got it.
No,
Sorry,
that's all right. We. I'm mindful of the people in my life who will point out when I do that all the time, because
sure,
we throw these things around because we know what they are.
sure. I'll try to go a little slower. I have let's see. I have some when it comes to the rares, the things like that are hard to find now, the Up the Garden Path and the Jade Hair and all the original monochrome modules from, when you start with the Palace of the Vampire Queen and the
Right.
Dwarven Glory, and go forward in history of each and every, Saj Kanth, Ghost Tower, those original tournament modules that were played at winter cons, a long time ago. And I have, got multiple copies of a lot of those. I have some original manuscripts from several of the modules. But, yeah, lots of stuff. And I for some reason, I have Gary Gygax's belt buckle, just the lizard man buckle. I just, these things, I've never tried to, I've never seen myself as, well, I guess what hoarder does think of themselves as a hoarder. I guess that's probably fair, but I really am trying. I'm not trying to be that way. I'm not trying to monopolize the market. It just is when I see stuff that is maybe, especially when it's undervalued. If I can grab it, because I know I can keep it safe, and it won't just disappear into someone's basement and never be seen again. I've purposefully set up the game hole as it's our play space, but also this looks like a museum, so people can come here and look at anything they want, and I'm happy to share my collection. So I always offer to visitors, hey, is there something you want to see? Is there some rare that you've never seen, you want to flip through it? Let's do it. I think that's really cool, because there's some stuff that I, when I was younger, that I would have loved to have seen that I just wasn't
Right.
available. So yeah, that's how, I guess, and it sort of has its own momentum. Then once you become known as a collector, I guess I'm a collector, and and that's where it's gone. And but when it comes to these days, I'm not really acquiring much stuff. I don't. I have pretty much what I want. I have a fairly complete collection, and I'm really happy with what I have. I'm complete with TSR through about 1999 or so. I've got a bunch of other stuff that I have that are other game systems and other stuff I play that I don't really consider my collection, but it's still part of the collection, I guess. But the core of my collection is TSR, and my claim to fame, my unique thing, in addition to the rares that I mentioned or the unique things, are that I have a complete set of everything that TSR ever produced in original shrink wrap.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was a particularly weird little windmill tilt that I got into, just because I realized in acquiring stuff at one point, I'm like, man, I got a lot of stuff in original shrink wrap. Wouldn't it be neat to try to get one of everything? That was really a long and expensive.
All the damage that wouldn't it be neat does.
Yeah. And it's just cool. I thought it was neat to have a set of things that had never been seen, like never been opened, like
Right.
unsullied by human eyes, if to use that. So, and I was able to get that done, and it's pretty cool. And again, I don't know what I'm going to do with this stuff eventually. I don't know. My kids are probably not going to be particularly interested, but I'm cautiously optimistic that the way the hobby's going, with the way it's expanded, that we'll have a real museum here soon, and I have reason to believe that'll happen sooner rather than later, and that's really great. So I'd love to have some of this stuff end up there or some other museum.
Um, for those who don't know, how big is that original Forgotten Realms map?
It is not quite a sheet of plywood, which is a 4x8. So it is I would say it's about 4.5 feet tall by 6 foot wide. I would say about
4.5 foot tall by 6 feet wide. Pause and think about that for a second, folks. Because I've seen it, and I wasn't there at TSR at that time, but it was. I think you got it. Did you get it from Julia Martin? Is that who you?
yes.
Yeah. So it was in her cube when I was there. And it's it's huge. I've seen there was a restaurant here, a couple of restaurants called AFK Tavern and AFK Elixirs and Eateries, and they were gaming themed. They were big role playing fans, and they had the original maps from the Waterdeep, from the box set that had the whole city of Waterdeep, and they gathered that. They got that together, and they had that. It was a whole wall in one of the restaurants, and people would look at that and go, "Wow, that's big." It's like, you haven't seen the original maps.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It's just I love this stuff, and I'm so happy to have a few of these artifacts, and they are artifacts that I can keep safe and preserve. There's to stabilize these things with the old inks and some of the tapes and stuff. It's a process,
Yeah,
and I wanted to make sure that was done, because these things shouldn't be lost to neglect and time. They're important.
it's good. I mean, it really is good that you and other uh, people with that awareness and passion for it are out there, because as often will come up when we talk about it, so many things at TSR were not valued in the building to that extent, and so many things got just thrown out, particularly in the move out to Seattle. I was one of the last people that was in the building. Well, I was one of the last people who was going to Washington, who was left in the building, and I got the assignment just to go through all. Everyone had moved out, but the cubes were all there, and people had to leave a bunch of stuff behind. So my assignment for about 10 days was to go through everyone's cube and desk and see what I could find that was uh, might be worth saving, or worth making sure didn't disappear. None of us thought any of it wasn't worth saving. That's why we had it, but we just didn't have room. Uh,
Sure.
so I was going through, and I found at two uh, uh, two complete runs of Dragon and Dungeon magazine between what was in various people's cubes, and pieces of original art. And in fact, in the art department, I found a dumpster with uh, um, little icons, like drawings of what would be icons in the book, or icons on a map, like the original pieces of that, or sketches for. Oh, this wasn't the finished one, but this was one of the sketches from when we were in production, and it was just there in a dumpster, and there's only so much of it I could save.
Yeah, it's just those stories. I've heard from a lot of your contemporaries too about those days, and it's just wild to me thinking about it. Especially the impact that all that stuff that you guys made had, is how much of an impact it's had on all of us, and then to think of it such a whirlwind at that time, with stuff being thrown away. I mean, the story of Jim Ward pulling out the original deities, demigods, out of the dumpster, and and all that stuff. It's just crazy. And I'm glad that at least some of it was saved. Unfortunately, Julie Martin kept all her stuff. That's a lot of
Yeah,
the stuff I have. She kept her entire. She sent everything she had to me. And I think she just wanted to be rid of it all, and she kept all her files. So I have some really cool internal TSR memos and stuff like that, and that I've shared with the John Petersons of the world and so on, and
mm.
so I've had it all scanned, and it's all viewable. But fortunately, a lot of it was saved. But man, it just makes me wonder, what exactly was just lost and thrown away. But
Did
so it
you
goes.
have you heard the story about the uh, Dave Sutherland's painting for the Holmes box set and Holmes book?
No,
No. So no
no,
one
no.
knew where that was. Like, as far as we knew, we just thought it was lost and gone forever. And well, I had left the company. The company had kicked me out, and I'd come back and done at least one round of consulting with them too. Shortly after that, I think Steve Winter was actually consulting for them at the time. Uh, so so over the years, there were a series of storage facilities across Wisconsin and Washington State and other places that had been bought, and stuff was just sitting in them. And there are several stories of things that were found. But every once in a while, the would come time to renew paying on it, and Wizards would decide they didn't want it anymore. And all the stuff from this facility would get sent to the offices for us to go through to see if there was anything worthwhile. But this didn't wind up coming to us. Apparently, someone in the shipping department was just going through a pile of stuff, and they found this painting and said, and they turned it around to show to someone else. Said, "Hey, look what some fan sent in. I think I'm going to toss it in the garbage." And the person opposite him didn't know what it was, but he said, maybe you should send it up to the third floor and see if that's important. Like, that might be something. And it was Sutherland's original painting of the dragon on the Holmes box set, and
Sure.
it I don't know what facility it had been sitting in for 40 plus years. But it just showed up in the shipping department in 2015 or 2014, and almost got thrown out again.
Wow. Wow. So I assume Wizard still owns it. I hope they do.
Yes, yeah. I wanted, when I heard that story, I wanted to see it because that was my first D&D game product too, and it's means a lot to me just as an image. And so, but it got taken away and put in a frame with protective glass and such. And then I don't know. No one knew exactly where it went. Some officer in the company wanted it hung around them, and it just was not around, and I couldn't find it. And I got back on another contract in 2017, 2018. And I asked around again, and they said, "Oh no, we have it in a storage facility now." And on my very last day, as a thank you, they took me into the storage facility so I could, have a moment with the painting. I've got a couple of snapshots of me actually getting to hold the frame, and so it's now preserved.
Nice. That's good. Good. That's what I had. I thought Wizards had. I didn't know how they got it,
Yeah.
but that's great. That's good to hear.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
I have
I say one of the other stories, and I'm sorry to turn your episode into my story time, but but it's my show, so I'm going to do it. But when we were moving out here, one of the first times this happened, everyone was. It was a couple of days before Gen Con. Everyone was getting ready. The plan was people were going to work Gen Con and then move to Washington afterwards, and so everyone's getting set. And Harold Johnson walks into Monty Cook's cube and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, just getting ready. And Harold says, "Well, come with me because I just was told that there's a warehouse, a storage unit in Janesville. Janesville, you know where that is, but Janesville, Wisconsin, which is about an hour from Lake Geneva, a little less. And our rent on it runs out tonight, and we're not renewing it. So we've got to go and see if there's anything worth that we need to get out of there." And so they drove out to Janesville, and back in the day, when there was a TSR castle at Gen Con, it had stations in it for each of the D&D worlds that they would run demos at. And each year we had a new diorama built to run the demos at, specific to whatever the adventure was. And no one knew what happened to the dioramas. We kept trying to find them. There was also a ton of painted minis each year. We'd get more painted minis. We couldn't find them, so we bought more the year after. It turns out that was the facility where all of that stuff went. So they got there and opened it and found these boxes with 6 years worth of dioramas and painted minis and legal papers and other things. And so Harold had to choose what they could put in the car. And that was however much they could fit in the car was what got saved. and everything else just got let go and sold at auction like junk wars.
Wow. Wow.
So I keep imagining there's
Yeah.
some secondhand stores that have D&D dioramas as display cases for their jewelry and other things. But so sad, so sad.
Sure. Sure. No, that's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so it hit 7 o'clock.
Yep. But at least now at this.
Uh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say at this point, hopefully we've lost no more attrition for all these relics. I think they're all pretty well found. I know several, many of the top collectors who have. I can tell you pretty much where each individual famous art piece is and who owns it, and where
Yeah,
it is, and it's very safe, and so that's good. I mean, this stuff is all secure now.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad we've entered this age where, as you say, no more attrition.
Yeah.
All right, so let's turn the conversation, leap ahead to how Gamehole Con happened. Because you're now 12
Sure.
years old. Is this a 13th year of that coming up, or 14th?
This is 13 that's coming up. Yeah.
Mm,
Well, um, much to our chagrin, Gen Con decided to move to Indianapolis. And that was a real bummer for us here in Wisconsin because that was pretty great having Gen Con in Milwaukee.
hmm
Um, but 100% the right decision by Peter and company. Gen Con has flourished in Indianapolis, and it's been, we went that first year that it moved to Indianapolis, and have been to a lot of them since. But and the years went by, and we what happened was the genesis, the spark of Gamehole Con came when a new game store came in my neighborhood. I'm in Middleton, Wisconsin. A store called I'm Board Games and Family Fun opened up,
hmm
and I thought it was a board game store at first, based on the name. And about after a month after the open, I said, "Well, I should check it out anyway." And it's not like I'm not a board gamer, but I'm just more of an RPG guy. They had a really nice RPG section, and I talked to the owner and I said, "Hey, man, this is really cool. Is there any way what can I do to help you? I want to make sure that this is awesome that we have a game store in our community. What can I do to support it?" And he said, "Well, have this play space back here, and it's not being very used very much." So I came back to the next game night and talked to the guys about it. I said, "Hey, man, how about we play games for other people? We run games for others, not just ourselves." So we, set up a meetup, that older
Right.
social media platform that I don't know if it's still around or not, but we've created a couple meetups, and much to our amazement, lots of people came out to play our games. We filled up all those games very quickly, and we had a lot of fun. And I was kind of looking around at this play space and full tables of people playing in our games. I thought, that's interesting. So then we got back together at the game hole a few weeks later, and we're talking about it, and said, boy, we really should just run a convention here in Madison. Madison leads the nation in per capita game stores, and this is the university, and it's a gaming town. I mean, there's so many designers that are here. We should have a legitimate, real tabletop gaming convention. So what the hell? Let's give it a shot. And so that's how it came to be. And looking around the table, it's myself and 7 other people total. We're not everyone's here every game session, but very capable people. We have people that are accountants and engineers and software people and another lawyer, and very, very capable folks. So I knew that we could run just about any business. Quite frankly, I think we could run General Motors, but
Yeah.
that's how it got launched. And so we spent a year preparing, and then we started. Our first year was 2013 at the what's now the Madison Marriott South. At that point it was the Madison Sheridan, and much to our delight, 400 and some people came that first year. But we'd worked pretty hard. I'd spent a lot of time in game stores around the state, passing out flyers, talking to people, talking to the game store owners, talking to gamers, telling about the show. and the whole point was to be a celebration of our hobby. And so this was not a
Right.
money making, thing for us. Clearly, I think the name probably pretty clearly communicated that, um, and that this was just going to be fun, and that we were going to celebrate our awesome hobby, and come and celebrate with us. And people did, and they've been doing so in ever increasing numbers ever since. And it's been wild how we are now, the size we are. We'll probably pass Origins this year in attendance, and it's just pretty wild that that this kind of goofy idea, this bad idea that's gotten out of control, as I like to say, is such a thing and such a big part of my life. And it's awesome. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been really a great run.
How many people were there last year?
We were 6,400 or so, right around there. We don't do as perfect of a job as, especially later in the weekend with walk-up badges, keeping track of them. But it's right around there, between 63 and 6,500.
And it was
Yeah.
it's 4 days now.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
I think the first year was only 3 days. I think after that we quickly went to four, and it's been a 4 day show ever since.
and it's in the middle of October. I'm not sure what the dates are exactly this year, but
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's October 16 through 19
oh
this year. We try to be in the middle of October, because it's lovely now. Unlike when you were living here, Stan, October is now an amazing time of year. It's late summer pretty much, and very early fall. Back in the day, when you were here, we'd occasionally get snow in October. That's just
yeah.
no longer the case. It's very nice. That's, I guess, one upside to climate change, has made October a really nice month here in Wisconsin.
Climate change has
Um,
saved October.
yes,
It's,
yes.
it's
At
funny
least for
because
Wisconsin.
no, go ahead.
No, no, just at least for Wisconsin. I'm sure somewhere
Right.
else it's awful now. But yeah, that's the way it works.
Yeah. No, I find it easy to remember because that's the week of my birthday.
Ah,
So Gamehole Con is now my birthday celebration plan.
well, that's tremendous. That's a happy coincidence. And so those who come to our show will find that a lot of the sort of broad stroke structures are similar to Gen Con, and that's not by accident. We patterned a lot of what we do off how Gen Con ran things, because it was and still probably is the greatest tabletop gaming convention in the world. It's just become such a monster now.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the buying a badge and then buying game tickets on top of that, and the cadence for when games get submitted and all that kind of stuff, we shamelessly copied from Gen Con. And and Peter Atkinson was a wonderful friend to me, and still is. He's a great buddy, and he was very generous with his time and thoughts on how to do all this. And we basically, Gamehole Con is the convention that we always wanted to go to. We have shamelessly stole ideas and concepts and processes from other shows that we'd been to, and tried to put them all into play. And that for me and the guys is no lines for anything. I just
Hmm.
abhor lines. Having your badges correct, having games start on time, having schedules that make sense, having technology that works, all that stuff. There's enough that of that can go wrong in a many thousand people event. We don't want to be part of it. We don't want to cause more by this kind of screw ups that happen only too often in tabletop gaming conventions, as we all know. So
Right.
we really try to run ours as perfectly as possible. We'd like to be known as the best run. Our goal is to be the best run convention, tabletop gaming convention there is, and that's always our goal every year, is to do that. And everything else will take care of itself because we're out of the way. Then the processes are seamless and smooth, and there's no friction for our attendees and our guests and our DMs and GMs, and game masters. So then it's just space for fun, and everyone can not stressed out about whatever process problems. Everything should work. That's our goal anyway.
And I mean, one of the things that Gamehole Con is known for is a very high uh, guest to attendee ratio. You have a lot of people that come, a lot of industry people uh, come as guests, and a lot of them, if they're not guests, they come because it's such a fun con.
Yeah, it's humbling, quite frankly. It's just amazing that the people I have the privilege to call friends now for gotten to know over the years is amazing. I've co-authored I think 6 books with Ed Greenwood now. I mean, it just is wild. Like this kid from Partyville, and here I am, with these kind of friends that I have now, and the stuff that I'm doing, and how involved in the hobby I am. Is amazing. And same, I know the guys feel the same way, the rest of the Gamehole guys. And so it's very cool that um, it seems to be, and I don't want to, it seems to be that people, once they come to the show, want to come back. And
Yeah.
that's really cool. And that's the only goal is right. I hope people have an awesome time and they want to come back. That's it. That's the sum total of our mission statement.
I'm just looking at what's going on in the chat. Uh, so people are asking some uh, questions about whether you have any tips for running a con, um, or what the biggest hurdles that you come up against are.
Boy, that's a big subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first of all, um, make sure that you really want to do it in the first place. And because it takes a lot, it takes a lot of effort to execute it well, just like any big project. It just is nothing. It's just you can't slapdash it and have it be a good product or a good result. So really, think that through. And when I'm asked this question, I put it in terms like this. I mean, think of the why. Like, why do you want to do it? What's the reason? Because through all the work and the difficulties of putting on a convention, that why will sustain you if it's I guess we'll call it righteous or
Mm,
true or fair or something like that. And so one of them that is not, in my opinion, a good why is I hope that I can make some money doing so.
right.
That's not a good why to for starting certainly a tabletop gaming convention. Maybe there are other kind of conventions that are more profitable than that, but this ain't it. But then hurdles are all the things. It's just you get a lot of people together, and so big ones are traffic flow, lines, congestion, ease of obtaining food, make sure your systems work well, making sure that noise is not too high, all those things that go into having a lot of people playing games in fairly close proximity to each other. There are a lot of hurdles. And I am very fortunate in my friends. I've got some smart people that I work with, and we really listen. I think we've been very good about listening to our attendees, listening to our guests. A lot of the features of our show were things that were suggested by people other than us, and said, "Hey, it'd be cool if you did X." And we thought about it, like, "Hey, X sounds great. Let's do it." Bringing some humility and some agnosticism to the project is, I think, very important. So then you can improve. You're not, you don't believe your own bullshit too much. You know what I'm saying? You just have to, you accept what people tell you, and if you do something that's not great, you can change it and take feedback and do it the right way. So that's the biggest one. And I think just like any other project, approach it with some humility. Listen to people who know and have done it before, and I'm a big believer that everyone has something to teach you, and I talked to as many people as I could, before Gamehole Con 1. I went down and bugged Frank Metzner, and I bugged Harold Johnson, and I tried to find anyone who would speak to me about the process of putting together a convention and some of the pitfalls that I could avoid. And all that, I guess, just really try to think your way through it and prepare as well as you can, and don't do it by yourself. Try to do it with other people, because it's just a better it's a inherently collaborative process, because that's what gaming is. And to have a good team is just, there's nothing better than that for pulling something like this off.
Yeah, I went to a con in January, Page, a Philadelphia area convention, and I got to talk to the
Mhm.
folks who put that on. Michael and Chat is among the people that works with them now, and you know, one I don't know if you know this, but Gamehole Con is definitely one of the cons that inspired them in putting they're in their they just did their third year. They're now planning for their fourth year, and they very much kind of like you were saying they very much take are trying to find the best practices, find what's going well, and Gamehole is one of the I know it's one of the things they look at for inspiration and uh, notes on how to do it right.
Well, I mean that's awesome. My Ron and Phil are great. They're wonderful people. I've been to two of the pages, and I think they're really on the right track. Um, and they're growing pains with everything. And man, getting investing in your people, making sure you have great people who are passionate and can star in their role. So if that's your volunteer coordinator or registration desk coordinator or free games library, whatever it is, empower those people to do what they do, and they'll just be tremendous for you. Um, yeah, it's quite a funny. It's an odd project. It's really it's an interesting one, but I really enjoy it. And again, if it's as long as I really recommend the folks to do so because you really want to do it for to celebrate this awesome hobby with your friends. Then you're in the right, I think, mind space to pull off a good con. We've all been to shows that don't have that feel, right?
Right.
That it feels forced, it feels disorganized, it feels half-assed. That's just not fun. Um, so we all know, we're all gamers. We all know, like when we come to a place and hey, this is legit.
Right.
This is some place by me for me.
Yeah. These are my people.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna stop here for the drawing. Those of you who are subscribed to our newsletter, I will send out. This is a work in progress in next week's updates. But yeah, coming along all right, I think.
It
Not
looks
bad for an
awesome.
hour.
I'm super impressed. I really, that is fantastic.
I'll make sure I send you a copy when it's done.
Oh, I'd love one. Yeah, no, absolutely. Please.
Um, all right. So, in all the things, the other thing that I was hoping to kind of squeeze in a little conversation about is True Dungeon, which is another thing you're involved in. Um, for the perhaps three people out there who don't know, I'm going to tell them what True Dungeon is.
Sure. True Dungeon is the brainchild of my partner and great friend Jeff Martin. He and his wife Lori own and run True Dungeon. It is a immersive um, experience, a 2-hour experience that you play a D&D style character through, and you run through different rooms of varying lengths. Different, some it can be a 6-room dungeon or 8-room dungeon or whatever. They'll have two generally types of rooms: combat rooms and puzzle rooms. And this immersive experience with NPCs that are costumed with great technology, animatronics, and you have it tells a story. It's an adventure. It's a mini campaign that you experience in live action role play. But you're using basically D&D rules. The character classes that Jeff has are essentially D&D based, and it's amazing. I wish I could take some credit for the awesome that is True Dungeon, but that's 100% Jeff Martin. I help with some of the contract stuff and the organizational stuff and pieces like that. But the token economy and the token process and the whole system that he's built is 100% Jeff Martin. He, quite frankly, does not get the credit for being an incredible game designer that he is. Because he writes all those scenarios, each season he does, and so the amount of material that he's produced over the years is unbelievable. And then to have it to be supported by such a robust mechanical system that undergirds it, not only just the tokens themselves, but the physical puzzles and the way that rogues and thieves solve traps and all this kind of stuff. It's amazing what he's done. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think it's amazing what he does. I love having it at Gamehole Con. It's very cool at Gen Con and shows up at a few other shows as well.
I was about to say, for the people that don't know, it sounds like the kind of thing you're like, how do I visit? When is it open? What are their daily hours? But it shows
Yeah.
up at a few cons. I have friends who very much got into escape rooms recently, and in the
Mhm.
last few years. And in part, I look at those so well, you know, True Dungeon does that with NPCs, with encounters. Um,
That's a very good way to explain it, though, to people who not, is that it's a series of escape rooms that are fantasy themed and much more elaborate.
yeah, and have a storyline attached to them.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, Michael Chet says, "Sounds like Dream Park." If you remember the Larry Niven books. Um,
So,
all right, so we're getting near an hour and a half, and I promise not to keep you much longer than that. I know it's getting late there in Wisconsin. So, uh, Gamehole Con and the so Gen Con is the con, as you said before, right? It is, as it bills itself, the four greatest days in gaming. But Gamehole Con and regional cons are really having a resurgence in the last, 5 years or so, 5 to 13 years, uh, and it seems to me that kind of event, I mean, convention culture as a whole has been blooming. Um, do you think that uh, we're coming into an age where there will be a series of Gamehole Con, like a circuit of cons that Gamehole Con could be a hub in uh, across the calendar year?
I, I, I do. I do. I think that the hobby has expanded to that level, that there are people that I see at the stops, if you will, on the circuit,
Yeah,
and it's an international circuit too, and we're growing here domestically with some really great shows that are coming up, that are putting their flag in the ground and saying, "Hey, man, we're important regionally here and nationally." And it's really cool, and it's just humbling as I can't even tell you that Gamehole Con would be even included in that breath. That somehow
yeah.
we should be part of that conversation, and that's
Personally, I think
amazing.
it
And
has to be, but uh, yeah. What other
thank you.
shows would you put, or assuming that I'm going to force you to put Gamehole Con in that? What other shows would you put in that category too?
So what's shows conventions are, it depends what you're looking for.
Hmm.
If you want big con experiences like True Dungeon, for example, there are very few that you can do that at. That just is what it is. It's Gamehole Con, Gen Con, and occasionally Origins, and once in a while you'll show up at a PAX, but that's really about it. Do you want a big vendor hall experience? Is that important to you? Um, but then when it comes down to, okay, if I'm really interested in, or I want a game with legends of the hobby, well,
Mm.
that's a little broader. So that brings into to shows like GaryCon, North Texas RPG. You mentioned Page. Page
Mm.
has done a really good job of recruiting all kinds of luminaries into to their show. There are others that I'm undoubtedly missing.
Right.
So there are a
Putting you on
lot
the
of other
spot.
shows that,
Sorry.
yeah. Um, it's unfortunate we need a West Coast convention. One to really. There are a lot of them, and don't mean to disparage them, but I'm actually surprised that one hasn't ascended to be a bigger role playing convention.
Yeah.
And there's some really good ones, but it's just interesting to me that that hasn't happened, and that's why I'm so happy to see Page ascend, because that's a part of the world that's really needed a tabletop RPG focused, like the actual gaming. Not talking about PAX, which is
Right.
um, that's a different thing. That's a an expo. and nothing wrong with expos. Expos are great. Come buy games. But to really go game and play games and get in games and meet new gamers, I'm delighted to see Page. I'd like to see an equivalent on the West Coast. Get to that size and in the thousands of
Yeah.
attendees. So it'd be cool.
I think so. Having lived on the West Coast for 25, 30 years now, and having lived both in Seattle and San Diego and LA area over that time, I think the thing that the Midwest and the East Coast have are how many people in those areas are will drive to get to things, and the West Coast is not dense going east the way the East Coast is dense in that kind of coming from the Atlantic into the Midwest. Right? We hit the mountains and we hit the desert, and
Sure.
so people from Washington will drive to Oregon, will go to Portland or things like that. People from LA might go to San Francisco, but not much further in kind of the driving to get to a thing. And I think that the West Coast just doesn't have that pull, that big enough pool to pull from. I think that's what doomed Gen Con West. What I don't remember what it's called when they ran it. Gen Con SoCal. It just couldn't pull enough people that they could feel like it was in their sphere. You had to travel to get there. And I think that's something the West Coast hasn't overcome yet.
It's just that makes total sense. That's a very interesting explanation. I hadn't thought about that. It's the geographical limitations, and then that makes sense. It is I look at San Diego Comic-Con as such a monster, but that's an international event. People fly in from everywhere to go to that. So I guess that is a different category. But anyway, but to your original question, I think we fortunately are in an era again where there's just so many good games and so many gamers, and people really want to interact with ourselves. We want to see all of us, right? Yeah. We want to play games with people. I'm a guest at shows around the calendar, and I love sitting down at a convention and having 6 fresh faces look at me, and they're excited to play my game, and I get to try to terrorize them for 3 hours or 4 hours, and it's awesome, and we all have so much fun, and it's just a wonderful experience. And I think and everyone should want that. Yeah. Yes, yeah, and it's such a great thing, and I think it's I love the fact it wasn't you remember the stand when role-playing games were going to be dead. Electronic games are going to kill pen and paper games. They're going to be dead, and no one wants to communicate anyone. No one wants to see each other anymore. Everyone wants to communicate on screens. Well, that's all not true. We want to get together with our tribe and roll dice and tell stories and have fun. And it's cool to see that being replicated all over the country and shows growing everywhere.
Yeah. The shows and the growth in high school gaming clubs are things that really make me bullish on the future of how wrong that prediction turns out to have been. Once people experience the joy of face to face, the interaction, it's great to do it on screen when you can't do anything else. But nothing will ever beat the high of getting together with people and playing together.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I've seen a couple of comments in chat. We didn't get to it to talk about the organized play program that we built called Wardens of the Eastern Marches, which I'm super proud of, and it's just going like crazy. And I hope we can change the world of organized play. Do a better process for organized play. I'm hopeful and trying to accomplish, and that's been cool. But that's another subject, and I appreciate that people are bringing it up in chat, and it's awesome that you're thinking of it, and thank you. That means a lot to me.
You know what? I guess I'll just have to have you back on again.
And I will do it from my home and make sure because I know my internet's really stable there and not in the game hole. I will do
Well,
everything I can to
and
make sure we don't have to do this lagging stuff again. That's
again,
terrible.
I think there's every possibility that the problem is on my end, but we'll we'll both next time we'll both have our irons or our you know what I mean. We'll both have it figured out.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure,
All right. So
for sure.
before we go, uh, I know that. Oh, here I even made a thing of people who are interested should visit GameholeCon.com. If they want to know about the show for this October, there's still plenty of time to get involved. Where else might people run into you on the
Yeah,
road?
the sure. I will be. I'm a guest at GaryCon coming up. After that is UK Games Expo, um, and then I think my next convention will be Gen Con. So that's yeah. I just was at Genghis Con, a wonderful show in Colorado. I was a guest there, very nice. Page I was at this year, um, and then we'll see in the fall. I'm not sure what else. Then it's of course Gamehole Con, and then after that, I usually don't really do much for the rest of the year other
Take
than
a
try to
break.
lick my paws. Yeah, lick my paws and figure out what we're gonna do for next year. Start working on all that stuff because there's no time off anymore. It just all right. Let's get ready for 2027. And that's how it goes.
All right. So, is there any other sites I should mention for people, or put in the links to the show notes? Or we're good.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm on Blue Sky, Facebook, stuff like that. But I mean, I'd rather you come find me at a show. Shoot,
Yeah.
if you shoot, anyone wants to talk to me, best way if you the contact at the Gamehole Con site. I'm so obsessive about the show that I look at every email that comes in. So if anyone wants to talk to me, ask any questions about the show or anything we talked about or something we didn't talk about, shoot an email there and I'll be happy to respond and get right back to you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a great conversation, and I'm serious. I'd love to have you back on to talk about more stuff, including Wardens of the Eastern Marches. So
That's awesome. Thank you, Stan. Yeah, it was great.
yeah. So if you just hold on, I'll do an outro, and then you and I can say goodnight. Thank you. All right, there we go. That was my conversation with Alex Kammer, who, among many other things, is the main force behind Gamehole Con, though, as he pointed out, many other people, but he gets to be the face. It's all right. Uh, Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, everyone in the audience. We had a very large audience with lots of good questions today. I think even if I didn't get to them exactly and pull you up there, sorry for not giving you credit. Um, but yeah, I think we covered a bunch of that. I will put the work in progress version of the drawing I was working on in the newsletter, which you can get at 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. Uh, you'll get updates on who the guests will be. You will be the first people to see the finished pieces when they're done. In fact, just today, I put up the finished version of my homage to Keith Parkinson's uh, cover for Dragons of War. So if you're a member of the newsletter, you already got to see that today. If you checked your email, go check your email. It's free to join. There, of course, are paid levels too, which I would appreciate. But you get in there on the free level and you'll have all that fun stuff. If you do want to join my greater Staniverse, you might want to consider joining my Patreon, patreon.com/Stanex. Again, lots of behind the scenes stuff. I make sure you get copies of all the drawings I release publicly and some stuff I don't release publicly. And there are upper tiers where you get sticker rewards sent to you in the mail and other fun stuff. But this is if you want to be part of the Stanex, the world of the Stanex, and help to promote these things, help me to spend more time making videos and other projects like this, that's a place to go. So I'll be back tomorrow with a new episode of Random Encounters, the improv cartooning show. And I'll be back next week. I'm not sure what's going to happen next week, but I'll be here next Wednesday. I hope you'll come back and join me. Until then, give this video a like or a thumbs up or a heart, whatever it is on the platform you're watching. It really helps to get the channel and the program shown to new people and get them to join us. As Alex was saying, join us. We can make a nice, fun community and welcome more people into it. Until then, thank you for being here. I'm glad you came, and I'll see you real soon. Bye now.